What is going on, guys? Carter here with Edged Mindset. We're taking a look at this really cool pocket knife coming in from Custom Knife Factory, right out of Russia, straight from China, whatever the case may be. This is the Peter Rassenti designed Persian, and it is a beauty. Before I begin, this is not going to be just some video where I'm talking about how awesome this knife is, because this knife is kind of strange for me. This is one of the knives where when I'm not holding it, when I'm not, when it's not in front of my face, I keep thinking I need to sell this thing. I don't like it that much. And then I go to grab it to maybe take some photos or shoot a video so that I can post it up for sale. And then I fall in love with it again. And I'm like, I can't sell this thing. It is gorgeous. And then I put it away and it's the same cycle again. It's one of those knives that for some reason, I don't know, I just can't appreciate it until it's in my hands. The other note, right, stick around, because there's something that bugs me on this knife that I think you should be aware of if you want to pick one up. This isn't like some hot off the presses, just barely came out knife, but it is recently newish. Later 2023, I think this came out. These are still available. They're still very, very cool, but there is something I don't like about these. And I have a question if anybody actually owns a real Peter Rassenti integral that's similar to this. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's do some specs. Yeah, the usual stuff, right? Like, you've got to do it. It's like a rite of passage for doing videos on YouTube about knives. You have to do the specs. People want to know what you're talking about. They want to know what kind of size you're looking at. You know what I'm saying? So what do we have here? We have, what is it? Like 8 3/4 almost, a little over 8.5. You're, under 9 inches. Pretty good size. It's a medium to large size knife, depending on your definition of medium and large. Blade length, depending on where you measure it from, 3 3/4. You could even say it's a 4-inch blade. It's 4 inches right to the middle of this finger choil right here, which is a little small for my fingers, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Or you could call that a sharpening choil, a very large sharpening choil, right above that flipper there. So pretty decently big knife. And one of the other things, look how thick that blade stock is. It's a little bit deceptive when you hold this, because I'm getting ahead of myself here, but because the handle is thin and slim, it's not too wide, but it's really kind of sleek and slim right here. It feels like it's, kind of a nimble type thin knife, when the reality is it's running some thick stock. Look how thick that stock is. So making a very robust tip right there, very strong knife. It has a hollow ground blade though, so it's reasonably thin behind the edge. Gets pretty thick at the tip though, but you want that, right? You want that tip to be nice and strong in case you've got to poke it into things, in case you want to pry things out, in case you want to do some heavier duty type work. You'd want to do that up at the tip here, but any slicing you would do back here, and it would do a great job. Let's get a weight before I completely lose track of myself here. 5.1 ounces, so not too bad for a titanium integral of this size. Ooh, while we're talking sizes, let's do a comparison to the Paramilitary 2. So, comparable, right? Very similar. Obviously the Persian's a little bit longer, but it's within the realm of the Para 2. So if you like carrying the Para 2, this might be right up your alley. Much sleeker though in terms of width and how it's going to carry in your pocket right there. The Para 2 with that freaking Spidey hole really makes this thing wide up at the top, but you got to love the spider hole. One of the best features of Spyderco knives in my opinion. There's a backside comparison right there. So comparable to the Paramilitary 2, but not, it's not the exact same. Let's go to the blade here. M390 steel, pretty standard for a lot of these overseas made knives. M390 is kind of the go-to steel. Bowler is raking in the cash with the amount of steel that they are producing for knife makers. It is bonkers. Satin flats right there. You've got an etched dark wash, kind of an acid wash down here, and then they stone wash it on the primary bevel. Nice thin secondary bevel right there, really well done. And then it also has the acid wash on the back of the spine. You can see the edges are all nice and chamfered, a lot of detail here. And then you've got that beautiful Persian trailing edge blade that just looks sexy. Something about the Persian style blade, really, I don't know, I like it. I know not everybody does. I think it's really, really cool looking. Very functional too. Really like it. Oops, that was a deploy fail. Amateur hour here on Edged Mindset today. We've got burp. We've got we've got stop pins pressed in right there that engage with the top here. That is your stopping mechanism. There's no pin inside. There's no stop pin back here. It's all being done up there. One minor critique for such an elegant knife is these stop pins are a little obnoxious. Like, they're not curved. They're slightly chamfered, but they're not really that sleek or well designed, and they're just black. I would expect a little bit more flair from a knife like this. Maybe domed around the edges, something like that. And I think you would still get plenty of engagement on here, but that's just me. You got jimping on the back here on top of this ramp. It is really aggressive, works really, really well. Some of the best jimping I've seen in a while, and it's done really well. Once again, attention to detail. Everything is nice and curved. Please don't mind the gunk inside there. This is not a brand new knife. In fact, I bought it secondhand. It was like new condition, but I bought it secondhand, and I've been playing with it and things like that. Moving down, we have a timascus pivot collar around this custom pivot right there. Matches on the back. There is no timascus pivot collar here. Here is Peter Rassenti's signature. So Peter Rassenti is a very well-respected custom knife maker. He's done a lot of collaborations with like Spyderco, the Nirvana, a few others, and of course he's a custom knife maker. One of the things that CKF Custom Knife Factory does really well above a lot of the other outsourcing companies is they collaborate with some of the coolest, most interesting, hottest makers. And a lot of their knives are kind of, you just don't get this sort of design in a lot of the other outsourcing companies. Now, that being said, they do charge a premium. So CKF knives are more expensive than other overseas made knives. The only justification, I mean, quality is comparable. And, you know, sometimes CKF's quality and quality control isn't the best. I've seen some pretty crappy knives kind of make its way into people's hands. But they have just the best collaborations and the coolest, most interesting, innovative designs. So, anyways, I digress. Here's the CKF logo. Now, the biggest feature of this knife is the fact that it's an integral. So that basically means this is a solid, huge slab of titanium. You can see there's no backspacer. There's no body screws. It's kind of interesting, though. I'll say interesting or ironic that one of the best features of the integral, in my opinion, visually, is that there's no body screws. But because of the nature of how it's done, you have to have screws in the pocket clip. You have to have screws here because there's no way to screw this from the inside because it doesn't come apart. So it's almost like you're trading one thing for the other. You go to all this work to remove the body screws so that you have this clean look, but then you have to do things with like the pocket clip. Kind of interesting. Just my opinion, neither here nor there. So integral, it's all milled out of one solid piece, right? So this is all, it's really a cool feat of engineering and manufacturing that is very, very interesting, innovative, and cool. I remember when integrals first popped off on the scene, blew people's minds. As it stands right now, I'm neither here nor there on it. They're fine. I don't love them. I don't think they're all that amazing. I don't really see a benefit to the integrals. In fact, kind of makes it more difficult to manage and service your knife in a lot of ways. But it is definitely cool in terms of being able to execute something like this. Lock bar insert, you're running multi-row bearings, standard stuff. This is a flipper. The action on this is good, not great. You get really good purchase on this flipper tab. I like how it's angled up like this, but it's not sharp. Everything is nice and chamfered. The action has a little bit of a dullness to it, a little bit of a dull thunk to it. Super smooth, drop shutty, but it's hard for me to put my finger on exactly what it is with the action. it's just not 100%. It's like a 9 out of 10. It's close. And there's nothing specific I can really talk about that makes it kind of not great, except for one thing. And that's the main thing I was going to talk about. And I think that's leading to a lot of the action kind of weird feel for me on this particular knife. The milling or the shape on this handle is crazy. See how it bows out? Kind of like, it reminds me of the wasp body style of like old Italian stilettos. How it kind of bows out to a point. Really adds a cool like three-dimensional type thing going on here that you don't see that often. Usually in integrals, they just go flat, you know, which is kind of boring. This adds a whole nother kind of dimension to it, which also means that the thickness of the piece of titanium used to make this is at least as thick as this widest part right here, and then this is all milled down. I also really like the acid stonewashing on the titanium. Looks gorgeous. Some of the best I've seen. You've got some jimping on the back here, which is good. You've got a timascus clip that is 3D milled. Timascus is basically taking multi-rows of titanium, folding it, and then you polish it and anodize it to bring out different colors in the folds. It's really cool. Essentially, it's titanium, right? It's just folded titanium, so it functions like titanium, which is good, but you get this beautiful anodization pattern when you anodize it, which is really, really nice. So, overall, this thing is pretty cool. It did have a little bit of lock stick, and I think that's somewhat common with these. It's kind of worked its way out now. Being that it's steel on steel, it's not going to really progress or anything, but even steel on steel, depending on the angle, you can have a little bit of lock stick, but that's gone away since I started playing with this. Look at that blade to handle ratio. You could not possibly stick more blade inside this handle. All right. On to the bad, and on to why I think the action feels a little funky. If you look at the blade here, look how much flex you have until the blade, like this is still in the detent. The tip almost pokes out the back. It does poke out the back. This is all flex in the detent. And I think that creates kind of a not a very crisp deployment. Now, you might be saying, does it have detent lash? No, it does not have detent lash. The detent ball seats into the detent hole on the blade perfectly. So what is going on here? Well, what's going on here, let's see if I can illustrate this, is do you see that lock bar moving? So this is having horizontal flex. So as you pull the blade out, and it starts putting tension on the ball, which is on the other side of this hole here, and onto, let's see if we can see it. You can barely see it poking out. So there's the detent hole. As it starts pulling, this whole lock bar is flexing out this way. And so it's giving a little bit of movement right there. And like I said, it's not that there's play between the hole and the detent ball. It's just flexing. Let's see if we can get it. It's hard to tell because I'm moving my whole hand, but and all it takes is like a little bit of movement here, and it'll translate to a decent amount of movement here, just due to, you know, science and physics and stuff like that. But yeah, it's got flex. You can see how this gap up here is starting to widen. And so what I'm wondering is, anybody that has a Peter Rassenti integral, like a real one, a custom one, do those function the same way? Do those have that same issue? I would assume so if this is based off of a custom model, because this is just due to how thin this lock bar is right here, which is, unfortunately, I don't know if there's a ton you can do, at least without doing any sort of crazy funky stuff with extra mechanisms. Because he wanted this handle to be thin and slim, you can only make this so thick without running into issues with like the mechanics and things like that. Now, could he have added a few millimeters down here, or could this have kind of maybe bowed out this way to add a little more stability to it? I don't know, maybe. But what that does, I mean, there's nothing critical, right? It's not a big deal. It still functions. Blade is secure. It doesn't rattle. But it does kind of make the action not as crisp as what you would expect on kind of a precision flipper like this. You would really think it would be like super crisp opening, and it's got a little bit of a dull feel to it. Now, maybe you're going to like that. Maybe you don't like that super crisp, kind of rockety action. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that kind of feel and how this lock bar will flex. It's not exclusive to this. Lots of knives will have this issue. I've had custom Ernest Emersons that have this issue where the lock bar will flex. Thinner the lock bar in width as well as the cutout will increase the chances of flexing as well as length of lock bar. So for example, ooh, this will be a fun example. This stupid monstrosity right here, this is all flex. And it's the same exact thing. There's not play in the detent. It's just this whole lock bar is just moving because the distance between the cutout, which is like all the way down here to here, is so long, and it's just not thick enough, both in terms of material width and how wide it is to kind of keep this super long blade stable. So this is an exaggerated version of the exact same phenomenon that's on this this little guy right here. So, all right, guys, let me know down below. Do you like this Persian? Do you like Persian blades? It's kind of a cool little screenshot right there. I might actually use this thing. Maybe I'll open this and get myself a screenshot. Ooh, that looks good. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one. I'm out. Comment down below. What do you think of these? Talk to me. Talk to me, guys. All right, take it easy.